Tonight's shiur is dedicated in the Refuah Shlema Orli Rachel Bat Yehudi Ruth and Sima Bas Rivka, as well as Ali Nashamot to Karen Goldman, Gito Bas Konya Sophia, Reb Chaim Yitzhak, and Reb Nathan Siegel and Roshon Brat. Tonight's shiur is given by Rabbi Mendel Kessin. So for those who don't know Rabbi Kessin, I think most of you by now do. He received smicha from Moshe Feinstein. Rabbi Mendel was also close to Chaim Friedlander Zatzal and helped with the publication of his Sifrei HaRamchal. He has a PhD in philosophy from Fordham University. He runs a private practice in psychology. He runs a private practice in psychology in Brooklyn and in Lakewood and in Yerushalayim. Rabbi Kessin is an internationally known lecturer and educator, spoken extensively throughout the world. I'm not going to go through all the different countries, but among his main, I would say, forte is in Hashkafa, learning methodology, and Shemeres HaLashon, based on the writings of the Ramchal. I'm not going to read any more of this, but I want to tell you that I get to learn with Rabbi Mendel every Wednesday morning, and anybody who's really interested in learning methodology, I think it's only open to men, but it's on YouTube afterwards. I highly recommend it if you have Wednesday morning 10:30 available. And without any further ado, I'll just introduce the title, What Happens on Rosh Hashanah? It's Not What You Think. Just remind you to turn off your cell phones.
Thank you for coming. Tonight actually is a very interesting shiur because it really goes into the genius of a Jewish holiday. Unfortunately, when it comes to understanding a Jewish holiday, most people have a superficial understanding. But the truth is that every Jewish holiday has a tremendous, what's called pnimius. It has a tremendous depth to it that most people never really get to see. And therefore, it's always very nice. In many ways, it's a privilege to show you the incredible beauty of Torah, and that it's not merely about one specific event. That every Jewish holiday really fits into a divine agenda. That's really an entire composite of many, many things that have to happen. And each holiday itself is really part of that agenda. It's part of that structure. So tonight I want to go into the whole concept of Rosh Hashanah. Now, as you will see, Rosh Hashanah is something which people think they know what it is, but that's not really what it is, as I will illustrate dramatically, actually, by asking many questions. The first thing we can ask in terms of Rosh Hashanah is really, what is the essence of Rosh Hashanah? What goes on in Rosh Hashanah? Now, most people would say, well, it's not a problem. It's a judgment day. It's a day when obviously the world is judged, everybody's judged, Jews are judged, mankind is judged, to see, based on the merits or whatever they did, to see what they will do, and to see if they will live or die, a That's what it says in the Matzah. Son Taikif, to see if they will live or die, and even in living, what the quality of life is. Now, all this is true, but really, it's a short sight. It's superficial. You have to understand what Rosh Hashanah is in terms of the divine agenda itself, and it's far greater than that. And one of the things that will come out of this is that you will know what the judgment is really all about and how to frame your defense. Because we all are going into Rosh Hashanah and we need a defensive argument, you know, and you can't use a lawyer because even lawyers are being judged, you see. So there's really no way you can turn to, you know. As they say, everybody's on the line, you know, and then at the end of it, finish, you know. And even judges are being judged, you see, everybody. And therefore, what emerges from all this is you really get a feel of what arguments you can use to negotiate, if you can use that word, with the Rebbeinu Shalom. That's really what you want to know. Because Rosh Hashanah is serious business. It's really very serious and so on. Because we know that what happens on Rosh Hashanah, whatever is judged on Rosh Hashanah, it goes through the entire year. So obviously it's a very serious time. But when you think about it, Rosh Hashanah in many ways presents many problems in terms of what we understand Rosh Hashanah is. Let's take a look at some of the interesting ideas or questions about Rosh Hashanah. And you will see that in many ways they jar your understanding of what it's about. First of all, Rosh Hashanah basically is a day of judgment. Let's go with that. And we know that it's only one day a year. Could you imagine a day of judgment being only one day a year? You have any idea what would happen in New York City if there was only one day a year that the courts were open? Right? You have no idea. The whole place would be pandemonium. The people would be committing crimes 364 days a year because there's only one day they have to appear in court. Right? So that makes no sense. How could you have a society where there's only judgment one day a year? That doesn't make any sense, does it? And not only that, but the Gemara says that Adam Nidem Chodyan, a person is judged every day, which makes more sense. But if that's the case, then what do you need Rosh Hashanah for? We already have a judgment, right, every day. So why do we need Rosh Hashanah at all? It would seem to be superfluous. What is the distinction? So that already begins to tell you there's something going on here that obviously we don't really know. Besides that, every Jewish holiday corresponds to a historical event, a Jewish historical event, right? We have Pesach, Exodus from Egypt, right? You have Shavuos, which is the giving of the Torah. You have Sukkot, which we know is either the booths that they built in the desert or the clouds, and so on, you know. Yom Kippur is when Moshe Rabbeinu came down after having begged the forgiveness of the Jewish people. The question is, what does Rosh Hashanah correspond to? What is the Jewish event of Rosh Hashanah? Now, the only thing we know about Rosh Hashanah really historically is that Adam Rishon, the first man, was created on the 6th day. The world was created on the 25th day of Elul, right? And therefore, Adam Rishon, the first man, he was created on Rosh Hashanah. But then that begs the question, is Adam Rishon Jewish? No, he wasn't Jewish. The first Jew that appeared is Abraham, Avraham Avinu. Ivri, he was a Hebrew, right? That was the original name of a Jew, Ivri, right? And so Adam Rishon was not Jewish, so why do we have a judgment day on the day he was created? Like, so what? You know, I think it would be better to have a judgment day on the day Avraham Avinu was born, whatever that is, right? Why Adam Rishon? So that also is quite a strange idea. Also, if you really think about that, it says everything is judged. Everything. All, not only mankind, but all living things are judged. Now, that presents a problem, because judgment is only applicable to somebody who has free will. And therefore he can be held accountable for his actions because he has free will. Does it make sense to judge animals or angels or any of beings? They're not guilty of anything. They don't have free will, so they have not obviously committed crimes, right? So then why judge them at all? Yet it says kol bo'olam, right? Everything that exists really is judged. So the question is why? Because like I said, they're not guilty of anything, so why bother judging them? You see? So again, that presents a problem in terms of understanding what is going on. Then there are other real difficult problems to understand. I'll give you an example. Is Rosh Hashanah Yom Tov? Yes, it's Yom Tov, right? You make Kiddush, you put out a meal, festive meal, right? You got all the great stuff, right? You great dishes, right? All the food, everything is out there, right? And because Rosh Hashanah is really Yom Tov, the Gemara calls it Yom Tov Shel Rosh Hashanah. Let me ask something. Don't you find that odd? Imagine if you were being judged life or death, and you had to appear in a court. Do you think the night before you would be sitting down to a festive meal? Does that make sense? You know what you would be doing? You'd be sitting in a room, taking a Prozac, left and right, right? Because you'd be going crazy, right? You're being judged life and death. Do you think you'd be having a festive meal with the whole family, with Kiddush and delicious food, right? It doesn't make any sense. You know, if somebody would ever ask you, imagine you invite a neighbor or a friend or whatever, and he sits down, and he says, you know, what is all this for? What are you celebrating? Oh, we're not celebrating anything. So then what's the whole point of all this? So you tell the guy, well, you know, tomorrow I'm being judged if I live or die. What do you think he'd look at you? So you got your mind? You know? It doesn't make sense. The actions that we do on Yom Tov is completely inconsistent and incongruous in terms of what is supposed to happen on Rosh Hashanah. This is life and death. What are they doing? Obviously that means there's something different going on than we imagine. You see? And that's a very strong question. Not only that, the Medrash says that the Malachim, the angels, say to God, well, it's a Yom Tov, so let them say Hallel. You see? Hallel? You're saying Hallel on a day and we judge life and death? How could you be saying Hallel? So what does God answer them? Well, since the books of life and death are open before me, I really can't say Hallel. You know? What kind of dialogue is this? You know, like the Malachim say Hallel. So God is saying, well, life and death, well, they know it's life and death. So why they even bother saying, let's say Hallel? See, the whole thing really doesn't make sense when you really begin to think about what is happening, you see. Also, we pray, during Musaf, we have a certain order of prayer. The order is, you say, what do you call it, Malchus. We proclaim God King. There's a whole bunch of verses that proclaims God King. That's number one. And then we say, Zichronis, remember our forefathers, their merits, please consider. And then we recite verses or psukim about shofars, about shofar, and so on, you know. What's the logic of these psukim that deals with these three topics? Then, of course, the main mitzvah of Rosh Hashanah is shofar, is blowing the shofar. Why? What does blowing a shofar have to do with judgment? Think about that. I mean, it's nice, you know, everybody goes running to shul to hear the shofar. Can you tell me what in the world the shofar is doing on Rosh Hashanah? You know, do we really need a musical accompaniment to the Musaf prayers? And so on, like, what's the logic of all this? You see? And then Gemara says that the sounds of the shofar, there are three, right? There's a tekiah, which is one blast, shvarim, and truah, right? And so on, that they resemble crying. Why does a shofar have to resemble crying? This is the question, you see. And then it says that, you know, when the Sultan, you know, when he hears the shofar, he gets tremendously confounded, which is also very difficult to understand, The Sultan has an IQ that's off the charts. He's been here in shofar for 3,000 years already. You think he would have figured out that the Jews are blowing shofar on Aleph Tishrei, So what's his problem? What's he getting nervous about? Confounded, you see. He knows what's going to happen, right? And he's experienced this thousands of years. So what's his problem? He's getting confused. We get confused, not him, you see. Also, we have other ideas. We have the Akedah, which is red. Why is the Akedah red? Yeah, you could say because we ask God to remember the merits of Avram and Yitzchak and so on. But there has to be a more profound idea. Also, if you think about Aseret Simei Tshuva, the 10 days of repentance, right? If somebody asks you, well, what do you think you should do? Do you want to have the 10 days of repentance before the judgment or after the judgment? Everybody would have said, hey, do it before the judgment, not after, right? You don't want to be found guilty and then you have the Aseret Simei Tshuva. You want the Aseret Simei Tshuva before the judgment. You see? So what does it mean that it comes after Rosh Hashanah? You see, So all of these questions are very powerful indicators that there's something going on about Rosh Hashanah that we really don't know. That's far more profound than we think. So the question is, what is it all really all about? By the way, if anybody's been keeping track of the questions, I asked 15 of them, if you've been keeping track. So I'm going to try to answer all 15 questions with one concept. That's a neat trick, as they say. But it's possible. Because when somebody understands really what a holiday is about, what any Yom Tov is about, it is possible to answer all these questions and really arrive at a beautiful understanding. But you have to get to the real story, the inner story, in order to do that. In other words, the trick is always to try to look at something not as a patchwork, fragments, but to understand the real story, and that unifies and answers really all the questions. In order to understand Rosh Hashanah, there's certain fundamental ideas that you have to know as a prerequisite. There are 3 systems or 3 reasons for the behavior of God. That's all there is. What God does is always because of 3 reasons. And that's how simple it is. Obviously, they're very profound. But there are 3 general categories or systems that determine the acts of God. What are they? The first thing is God decided that He wants to bestow an infinite state of goodness on a human being. That's what He decided. And the infinite state, why He decided, we don't know. But that's what He wants to do. What is that infinite state of goodness that He wants to bestow? And that is an attachment to Him. The greatest pleasure a person can get is to be attached to God, to experience Him directly, to the extent that a human being can experience God. That's the greatest thing in existence. There's nothing greater than that. And this is the purpose of creation, that He wants a human being to experience God Himself. It's called Vekus. It's really what Vekus is. Attachment. That what God wants ultimately is that a human being should attach to Him. In any case. But God had to make a decision. Does He want that attachment to exist without any input of man? Which means that it's a gift. I give you a gift. You don't need to do anything. In that sense, it's pure chesed. Okay? Or does a person have to work for it? In some way, he has to earn that dvekus. And therefore, the dvekus would be a reward, not a gift. And God made that decision. He decided, without going into why, that the best thing for man to do is to earn the reward, to earn this state, and therefore this state is now called a reward, not a gift. Obviously a very momentous decision that he made, you see. Now, once he decided that, then God had to provide some type of task. Well, what are you supposed to do? You know, if you have to work for it, earn it, you gotta do something, right? So God creates a situation where man can do something. But in order to do that, what he creates is a world, okay, a situation that can be worked on. In other words, it's an opportunity to do something. So what God does is very interesting. God absents himself. He removes his presence from the creation. He creates an entire universe and he removes himself from that, where you no longer perceive God as the source of everything. So therefore, and that's really Olam Hazeh. This world is really a world where the presence of God is removed. It's the definition of Olam Hazeh, you see. If that's the case, and that's called the Chesed, it's called the deficiency, you see. So the world must be created deficient in order to enable man to have a job or a task to do. What's the task? What's the job? So what the job would be is to bring God back. In other words, I will create, God says, a universe, a situation in which I am not here. But I'm going to leave little hints that I exist, you see. So that's what God does. He creates a world where he's not there, and he leaves little clues or hints, indicators, that there's a supreme being involved. That many ideas that encompass that, and so on, you see. And therefore, this world has a chesed, a deficiency. What does God want to do? God wants mankind to bring him back, where his presence will pervade the entire universe, you see. So God goes from a state of hester, concealment, to a state of gilui, revelation. You see, now if man does bring him back, which he will, okay, then that's called tikkun, rectification or restoration or repair. It's all the same idea. Man must repair the existential state of the Bria. The existential state of the Bria is the removal of God's presence, and the tikkun, the rectification, is the return of God to that part of creation. That's the task given to man. And this is what God does. Okay, now, how do you do it? How does a person do it? So what God did is very interesting. God always works with the concept of midah keneged midah, measure for measure. Okay, so what God says is the following. If the reward of the end of the matter is that you will experience me, you will know what I am and who I am to whatever level and so on, then the task is to find me. To the extent that you find me, to that extent you will experience me. You see, measure for measure. To the extent that you labor to realize that this universe is not physical, that there's an entire spiritual dimension, right, beyond this physical, and that there's a supreme being. To that extent, you will experience me because you looked for me, and guess what? You found me. So it's in many ways measure for measure. So therefore, what God decided is to give mankind mitzvahs, commandments. Because a commandment is really a way that you express that I believe God is supreme, and therefore I will follow his will. You'll notice that every mitzvah in the Torah interferes with your life. That sounds like a funny way to say it, but that's really what it does. In some way, for instance, you're walking the street in Jerusalem, right? And all of a sudden you smell this incredible steak or some incredible dish, right? And unfortunately, well, actually I shouldn't even use the word Jerusalem. You're in Manhattan. It's much more appropriate, right? And you're in Manhattan and you haven't eaten lunch, right? And you smell this restaurant, and you take a look at the restaurant, and it's treif. Okay, so what do? So you say to yourself, wait a minute, you know, I'd love to go in and eat this stuff. But the problem is that there's a commandment that says no, you cannot eat meat which is treifa. So that becomes a contest, isn't it? It's a tremendous conflict. Because if you go in and eat from that restaurant, what you're really expressing is that I exist independent of God, and I have my own will. Do whatever I want, you see. So that becomes a sin. If, however, you don't go into the restaurant and eat, what you're really expressing is, no, the will of God supersedes my will, right? And as a result of that, I believe He's the only will. We all emanate from God. Therefore, I will not violate His command. You see, so therefore every mitzvah is nothing more than an opportunity or a wherewithal to express that you believe there's a supreme being that exists and that His will supersedes yours. That's the concept of a mitzvah, you see. And that's the way you do the tikkun. Every time you do a mitzvah, it's an expression of Ein Milvado. Besides God, there's nothing else. And therefore God says, if that's what you believe, then I will get closer to you. That's the logic of a mitzvah. Now, God knew that mankind would not do mitzvahs. Actually, it's Jews who would not do the mitzvahs. So He initiated a second device called shofar, which I will talk about, God willing, here next week. I'll elaborate on that. So that is a secondary device. And then God knew that people will not do tshuva, really. So therefore He initiated a third device called Yisurim, or suffering. Okay, and I'll talk about that next week and so on, you know. But in any case, there are three devices that do the tikkun. Those are called the three tikkun devices. Very important, okay? But in the end, with all these devices, this occurs. What occurs? That God gets closer, and the revelation of God will happen after the Jews do all the mitzvahs, or tshuva, or yisurim, and then God appears in the Messianic era. It's really what it's about. And the Messianic era is nothing more than the ultimate fulfillment of the whole job of creation. In fact, the Mashiach cannot come until the Jews will have done all the jobs that they have to do, and then Mashiach will usher in the divine presence. It's really what it's all about. It's really very simple in that sense. And that's what happens. Therefore, based on what I've said, there are now three systems or actions that God does. And everything He does, all His actions or behaviors, falls with one of these three systems. The first thing is called, the anhogo, the behavior or the actions of God, hakiyum, which is meant to create a universe, a backdrop, create man, and then provide man with the opportunity to do mitzvahs or to do the tikkun. So therefore, all the things we see, all of it, must have a rationale that they advance the purpose of creation. Now that's a very amazing statement. Because if you'll notice, most of the things that exist, we have no idea why they exist. For instance, there are 300,000 different species of beetles. You're probably thinking, well, they're all crawling in your backyard, right? Yes, there are 300,000 species of beetles. It's astounding. You mean, if God had created, not 300,000 beetles, there are trillions of beetles. But a species means different types of beetles. It's astounding. There are 7,000 species of ants. There are 30,000 different species of orchids. Believe this? It's astounding. Yeah, you have no idea that everything you look at has species, thousands. What's interesting about all this is that the only creature, living form, that has no species is man. Think about that. You know, there is no, man is the only creature of all creation that has no other species of man. You know, I know you're going to think about yourself, well, my neighbor, he's got to be another species. You know, I realize that, you know, so we can debate that. But take it on faith, you know, there are no other species, no matter what you think of your neighbor, you know. Anyway, The question is, why do you need all this stuff? You know, we don't know. Every species that exists must exist to advance the purpose of creation, which is tikkun. If one was missing, it wouldn't work. We don't know. And so on. And there are thousands of, 5,000 mammals and so on and so forth, We don't know, but the thing is, everything that exists advances the purpose of creation. All of this was part of the Unanswered, that God knew. He said, listen, in order for me to create the ability of man to do the tikkun, I need to create a world that has thousands and thousands. Scientists estimate that there's between 10 and 100 million different life forms. You have any idea what that is? 100 million life forms. It's incredible. And every one must exist, or else there wouldn't be a tikkun. And what's interesting is that if a species becomes extinct, man cannot destroy. The only reason why God allows him to destroy a species is because that species is no longer necessary for the tikkun. And therefore he says, do what you want. It's interesting. But this is the Unanswered, where everything that's created is created for the specific purpose of allowing mankind, actually the Jews, to do the tikkun process. That's the first. So that's the first series of actions that he does. Second series of actions that he does is he awaits. He awaits the performance of man to judge him. That's called the Unanswered. It's the attributes of God or the behavior that judges man. But for that, God waits for man to act. It's a response, you see. And that entails a judgment. And God waits for man to act. And then in response to what he does, he will be judged. He will either be rewarded or punished or whatever. And you should know there's no such thing as reward in this world, right? What reward means, he will be given a greater opportunity to do more mitzvahs. That's the concept of reward that you can have in this world. But whatever it means, that's a second area or aspect of judgment, or actually the behavior of God. Now, here's the problem. If Jews have to do the tikkun, okay, then here's the problem. They have to have free will. If they don't have free will, then they're not given credit for what they did, right? If they're compelled to do it, there's no credit for that. So therefore, mankind, or Jewish people, must be given free will. So therefore, they can be credited or discredited, right, with what they did. But the problem is this. If that's the case, it is possible for mankind, but I'm going to use mankind now, to sin 24/7. What happens if they do that? That means the will of God is frustrated. That means they're not doing the tikkun. It's possible, because they have free will. Maybe unlikely, but it's possible. That means man has the power, right, to frustrate the will of God, that there will be no future world. It's interesting. And did that ever happen? Yes. Noah. Mankind sinned to such an extent where God decided that he cannot allow this world to exist because the evil is so rampant that anybody who is in this world has no free will anymore, because there's so much the opportunity to do evil is infinitely greater than the opportunity to do good, and therefore the whole thing doesn't make sense, because that's really what happened. So therefore you see, fortunately for us, Noah didn't do that. But imagine if Noah had joined the crowd, then he would destroy the whole creation, and that's the end of it. You see? So what did the Moshe do? You see? So what God does is he initiates a third series of actions. What? It's called Unanswered. Thank you. What is Unanswered really? That's the question. Why is it called yichud? Because normally when you have a judge, right? If there's a system of judgment, right? Then what that means is that if people don't deserve, then they don't deserve it. There's no, there's no obligation to rehabilitate them. There's no obligation at all. It's a justice system. You do good, you get good. You do bad, you get bad. And that's it. There's no obligation from a judge to rehabilitate. That's far beyond justice. So when we say Anogas Yichud, it is the acts of God that God does, okay, that indicates that he is above justice. That means he can dispense with mishpat. He can dispense with judgment and do whatever he wants. He doesn't follow any rules other than what he wants to do. Okay? And that's why it's called Anogas Yichud. Now, what does God want to do? Thank you. What does God want to do that he will dispense justice? He wants to make sure that there will be a future world. There must be a future world. He refuses to allow mankind to frustrate his will, even though mankind has free will. That's the third series of actions. In other words, it's called a backup system. It's called a contingency plan. That if people don't do what they have to do, God insists that there will be a future world, and there will be Jews in the future world. Interesting. And so on. And that, in a certain sense, that's a guarantee that at least the Jewish people must exist, and there must be a free, a future world. In any case, now, one of the primary ways of Anogas Yichud is that it works through Yisurim, or suffering. That's number one. The second thing is that the Anogas Yichud, to us, makes no sense. It is a concept of why evil people prosper, why righteous people suffer. It's a topsy-turvy world. That's what Anogas Yichud is. When the attribute of justice leaves, and the attribute of Yichud comes in, the backup system, then the whole world becomes topsy-turvy. It doesn't make sense. It's like an Alice in Wonderland world where nothing makes sense. Everything is irrational, you see. And God does that because he knows what he has to do to save mankind, but specifically to save the Jewish people. But it doesn't, it's not, we don't understand the logic. It's called Anhogen Hysteris, you see. It is something which is completely concealed, you see, and to us it's illogical. But God knows exactly what he has to do, and he employs all different kinds of things to guarantee the existence of the Jews. Very important concept, okay?
You call it Hagat.
In any case, that's what it means. Sadik Hashem b'chol dorachov. God is righteous in all his ways, you see, because in the end, you need to be worthy of the future world. But to get there, the Chesed b'chol ma'asav. But to get you there, he can be a Chesed, which means he can rehabilitate you. That's the concept of Chesed, that he's above Lifnei Mishus Adin. That's why God is two things. He's a tzaddik, tzaddik Hashem b'chol dorachov, you see, the Chesed b'chol ma'asav. And he's a Chesed, you see. And that, you see, where it says, where God says, after they got out of Egypt, Ani Hashem Refecha, I am God, your healer. What do you mean you're a healer? You know, hey, you're a judge. What does that have to do with healing? Healing is above judgment. Nobody tells you that. There's no law or obligation to heal. But the Moshe says, listen, I'm much more than your judge. A judge just looks at, well, do you have the merits or not? A healer, right? I don't care how you got sick. I'm going to heal you. I'm going to rehabilitate you. I'm going to cure you. See? So when the Moshe says, Ani Hashem Refecha, that's the greatest news we can ever hear, right? Because it means that no matter how bad we are, right, he's going to heal us and get us into the future world. Maybe a little rough ride, that's true, but in the end, we will get into Olam Haba. That's the secret of Ani Hashem Refecha, what the Moshe says. Okay. Now that we understand these three ideas, we can understand, we can begin to understand the whole concept of really Rosh Hashanah. If you open a business, let's say you open up a business on January 2nd, right? You don't just open a business and walk away. No, you need what's called an assessment. In order to understand, what's the bottom line of a business? To make money. So you don't just open it up and then never look at it. No, you have what's called a periodic assessment, right? You need to know, well, do I have too much inventory? Is my marketing good, right? What about my the accounting division? You know, what kind of, and so on. What about my research division? Every business always needs a periodic assessment. You know, just ask any accountant. That's what you did, right? That's why, because if you run a business, you want to see what's happening. You may not be making too much money because one of your divisions may not be the right way. You see? So there's always a periodic assessment in any venture, right? In any kind of venture that you do business and so on, right? The same thing with Rabbi Mendel, God. What's the business of God? Think about that. What's his bottom line? He has only one bottom line. What is that? I want to come back. That's his bottom line. Tikkun. Everything else is irrelevant to God. You know we think that your concerns are the most important thing. Really, in the end, it's irrelevant. The only thing relevant is that God wants to come back. He wants the Jews to do the tikkun. That's it. Nothing else matters. You see, that's the whole purpose of creation, and everything that's created is for that purpose, to advance the purpose of creation, which means tikkun, which means the Rosh wants to re-enter the creation. And that's really what the Messianic era is, right? Where it says, Ki molod's deo, the earth, as Hashem, the earth will be filled with the knowledge of God as the waters covers the seabed. You see, that's all he wants. You see, everything is just a wherewithal, a hechetimsa, to get to that place. You see, therefore, this business, so to speak, this endeavor, God has to evaluate it. Where's it holding? You see, did the Jews do their job at all? Are the Jews doing the tikkun? You see, where are they holding on this tikkun? Is the amount of mitzvahs that they're doing, is that enough? Maybe it's not enough. Maybe now, for instance, the Jews in Spain, well, they're not doing their job. They're assimilating, they're intermarrying, right? So I gotta kick the Jews out of Spain, you see? And I gotta bring them to another country, and in that country, they now can do a better tikkun. And God looks at all of this. He looks at the world, he looks at the Jews on an individual level and on a national level. You see, where are they holding in terms of the tikkun? It's not so much sin that he's concerned with. Where are you on the tikkun contribution? Every Jew is assigned a place in creation. Every Jew. You don't realize that. You have a unique assignment that only you can do. If you don't do it, nobody else can pick up the slack. You have to come back as a reincarnation and continue the job. That's why there is Gilgal, you see, because that aspect of creation is assigned to you. So the question is, where are you in terms of contributing to the tikkun? That's this is a very important concept of the periodic assessment. And that has to happen at least once a year. Now, that's what happens on Rosh Hashanah. It's not a matter of did you sin or did you do mitzvahs. That's included. The real thing is, where are you with the tikkun? You see, what are you contributing? Are you doing the tikkun or are you doing the kilkul? Are you helping advance the purpose of creation? Or are you rather removing it further? You see, so then God looks at you and he looks at the Jewish people in whatever country they are. It's okay, they're not doing their job, so I now have to change the game plan. Because in this country they're not doing it, I have to allow them to undo what they did, which is not good, right? And I'm going to move them to another country. For instance, God may say, okay, they're in this country, but I need to move them to another place. But in order for that to happen, God will say, okay, I'm going to make that place that I want to move them to wealthy. And then the Jews will go into that, and in that place they will be tested. You see, it's infinite cheshbonos, as they say. exactly who to move, where to move them, when to move them, and only God can do that, and so on. But in the end, there's only one thing he has in mind, tikkun, to come back, you see. So therefore, the Rosh Hashanah is all about a periodic assessment of the entire creation. We fit into it, right? Because we contribute to that. You see, you know what it's like? It's like a boss of a factory. Goes into the factory, goes into his office, right? And he evaluates all the workers. You see? But it's not so much evaluating the workers as well, that is he doing a good job or not. It's, am I making money? Is this guy helping me make money or not? You see, that's the question here. Not like, was he a good guy or bad guy? You know what I'm saying? The key is, well, what's he doing for my pocketbook? You see, that's what Rosh Hashanah is. It's about the periodic assessment. And therefore, Rosh Hashanah is what's called a readjustment. That's what happens on Rosh Hashanah. God now readjusts everybody. Now we're hoping that God's not going to look at us and say, well, hey, you did a job. You didn't do a very good job, Until now I gave you a great job. You had an easy life, right? You're not doing very well. You're not contributing to the thing. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to move you from the VP to the clerk. And all of a sudden you become poor. You see, because now God wants you in a state of poverty. What are you going to do? But we don't want that. You see, we don't want to be moved, or maybe we do want to be moved. Maybe if the guy's poor, he'd love to be moved to a position of wealth. But everything is moved. The person is moved. His positions are altered based on what God assesses that person to do the tikkun. That's what happens in Rosh Hashanah. It's a whole different understanding. It's a boss coming into his factory and moving everybody around, including pink slips. And a pink slip is your debt. That's what a pink slip is. That's the equivalent, right? In a factory, the pink slip is you're fired. Here you get fired by being killed, right? In some way, that's why. You have a Messianic Turkish. Who's going to die, who's going to choke to death. You ever read that kind of stuff? Chills go down your back. But what that means that you're fired. But God doesn't fire a Jew. What he does, he says, okay, you're not making this Gilgul, right? You already chose the way, you're not doing it, I'm going to kill you, or I'm going to exterminate, whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to bring you back 80 years later in a different country, right? With a different wife, different kids, and hopefully you can do a good job there. For God to do that is nothing, whether he shift you around. That's not even an afterthought with him. You see, with us, it's a big deal. Hey, you don't want to leave the planet, right? But it's all in the context of you need to contribute to the tikkun. What are you doing, you see? And therefore, what Rosh Hashanah really is that it's the periodic tikkun and it's the readjustment based on your actions and the spiritual requirements or needs of what you need to do to contribute to the tikkun. It's much grander than you can ever imagine because everything is included, you see. Now, what God did is incredible. He didn't have to tell anybody what he's doing. You see, he could have come into his office in a factory, right? He could have sat down in his big chair, and in an instant of time, the mission says, the skira achas, what God does is he starts from here, and in an instant of time, he evaluates the entire creation, everything. All 100 million species, everything, in an instant of time. And he could have done it, he didn't have to tell anybody. Why? Because for him, what's the big deal? Nobody knows. The Malachim don't know, the Sultan don't know, we don't know, finished. I don't have to tell anybody. So what the bunch did is a tremendous act of chesed. Because he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to decide what to do to you and offer you stuff. So what he decided to do is he's going to tell you that the big review is coming up. You see? So it will allow us to shape up. That's what he did. So he informed us that he is now going to do what? He is going to evaluate the whole creation. So you need to get your act together. That's a chesed. You see, why? Because he wants us to influence the verdict. That's why. So when does it start? It starts on Elul. You see? Elul. Hey, it's Elul. Rosh Hashanah is right around the corner. 30 days. I want you to do tshuva. You see? You do tshuva, then you will influence the verdict. You see, that's the key. And that was a tremendous act of chesed that he did. You see? Like he didn't have to do that. You see? So therefore, that begins to tell us what Rosh Hashanah is and why Elul exists. Because he told us that he's going to do the review, and therefore we need to shape up. Okay? But there's a big problem that God created. Because if God would have evaluated by himself, then nobody would know. He just do what he does. It's like a boss going into the factory. He does what he does. Some guys he elevates, promotes them. Some guys he demotes them. And some guys he just fires. Nobody would know. You know, all of a sudden one day in the mail you get a pink slip, and that's it. That you are informed by the verdict or the consequence. But the Russian didn't do that, you see. So he gives us Elul. Then Rosh Hashanah is what? That's the judgment itself. And then he says, wait a minute. You know, in every court land there's an appeal process. The Aseret Tshuva is the appeals, you see. Because maybe then you'll really get your act together. Because you've already been judged. You know, you have no idea what it is. Maybe you're found guilty. So Rosh Hashanah says, okay. So you're going to say, why didn't I take advantage of Elul? So Rosh Hashanah, okay, I'll give you another 10 days. After the judgment, that's called the appeals process. You see, look how much God wants you to do. So he gives you an appeal. So first he warns you 30 days before. Then there's a judgment, right? And then there's the appeals. It's incredible how much time he's giving you to do tshuva. Now, there's a big problem. What's the problem? If God would have judged everything in creation without telling anybody, then nobody would know. You wouldn't know. The Malachim don't know. Nobody knows. It's in the mind of God. But when God warned us because he wants us to influence the verdict, there's a problem now. Because now all of a sudden we know, and it's become a whole court case. There's a Bezdin, right? But wait a minute. If it becomes a court case, what happens? Then the Sultan is called in to prosecute. Because whenever there's a court case, there's always a prosecuting attorney. And the heavenly DA is a Sultan. So now that we are being judged openly in front of a court, and God is saying, okay, it's open now, right? So the Sultan, he's there now, going crazy. He's trying to condemn everybody. So what did God do for us? It's like thank you and no thank you. You know, thank you for giving me time to do tshuva, but no thank you, and I gotta face this heavenly prosecutor, right? And there's no, you can't bribe the guy, you can't throw him out, you can't fire him. What can you do? You're finished. And let me tell you something, you don't want that prosecuting attorney, because that guy, he's gonna take a look, and you're gonna do your tshuva, I'll think about doing tshuva, who knows? And maybe I'll start in a half year from now, And the Sultan's gonna think about, he's gonna get up in front of him and says, he's gonna look at the Bezdin, because that's what he does, right? He looks and says, do you hear what this guy's saying? And you believe this guy? You call this a tshuva? And he's gonna rake the floor with you. That's what he does, you see? Because with him, hey, it's either 100%, and if there's a nano amount, a nanogram of insincerity, he's got it. He knows exactly. We don't want that. It's like we say to God, thank you and no thank you. Because at least maybe when you would have done it, okay. But now the Sultan's not interested in rehabilitation. He's interested in judgment. And he wants to destroy us. He couldn't care less. So it seems like inadvertently what the Rosh Hashanah has done is he has given us over to the Sultan. Bad news. You see. So what does he do? This is like a whole soap opera. You thought the soap operas was interesting, right? This is real drama. It's what it really is. So what the Baruch does is an incredible thing. You know, he wants to tell the Jews that he's going to judge them because he wants them to do tshuva and influence the verdict. He doesn't want to say chayav. He wants them to say zakai. You know, like I said, at the same time, the Sultan is going. He has got a heyday out there. So Baruch says, you know, there's only one solution here. I need to stop the Sultan. I can't just dismiss the guy because that's his job. You know what I'm saying? That's his job to prosecute. I can't dismiss the guy. You know what I'm saying? Or maybe he'll sue me in court. So Moshe says, okay, I'm going to leave it up to the Jews. They can stop the Sultan. How? I'm going to give a mitzvah of shofar. Shofar. That's what it does. If the Jews blow shofar, then all of a sudden, as soon as Shemayim hears the shofar, then God gets up from his kisei mishpat, his judgment, and goes into his private chambers. Right? Private chambers, and then he judges the Jews. But what's the judgment? It's no longer the judgment where you have a prosecuting attorney trying to condemn us. It's the judgment based on the Anhogas HaYichud. It's based on the Anhogas HaYichud. It's based on the contingency plan that guarantees the Jews must be in Olam Haba. That's what it does. What a difference. I see. And that's what happens when the shofar happens, that the Moshe gets up in the kisei mishpat, because he's the judge. He is the actual judge. In other court cases, you should know, during the year, God does not always judge directly. You can have malachim judging. God assigns them to judge, but of course God tells them what to do and all that. It's not like they figure it out themselves. And so, you know, but on Rosh Hashanah, he is the judge. You see, so as soon as God hears the shofar, so to speak, God stands up, so to speak, not literally but figuratively. He says, okay, court's over. And the Sultan is going wild because he realized what just happened. He just lost. Not because he lost the case. He just lost his job. See, and the Russian says, okay, I'm now going into my private chambers and I will judge the Jews no longer based on mishpat, but based on yichud. You know, I'm now going to look at them and guarantee that they must be in the future world. That's a whole different scenario where we don't have to worry. You know, it can still be very rough, but at least you know that in the end of time, you will be in the future world. That's the guarantee, you see. And as a result of that, that's what the shofar does, you see. And that's a very important idea. And that's why there is a shofar. So in the end, what we see is an incredible grand plan. It's a plan where God judges the entire creation. And he alerts the Jews so they can influence the verdict, you see. And even though he initiates a judicial process, you see, as soon as the Jews blow shofar, the mishpat ends, those series of actions of mishpat ends, and the series of actions which is yichud begins. But the problem is in yichud that nobody knows what goes on. It is a completely concealed way that God saves the Jewish people. Now, once we understand this, we now begin to understand what Rosh Hashanah is really all about. And we understand the answer to all of this. What is the essence of Rosh Hashanah? It's not judgment, it's assessment, you see. Although it carries the weight of judgment, obviously, but it's not the same. God looks at you in terms of your tikkun contribution, not so much your sins. And of course, we do our chetz, and all that chetz, but he looks at you, of course, he looks at your sins, because that's what's preventing you from doing the tikkun, your contribution. But that's, in a certain sense, secondarily. His concern is the bria. His concern is he wants to come back, you see. And therefore, everything is moved. Nations are moved. Success is moved. Everything is moved. Wars, everything is done predicated on the assessment of the entire, what's called tikkun hakloli, the entire rectification. And now you understand, that can only happen once a year. Because what God does is he assesses, readjusts, right? But he doesn't do it every day. He's got to allow that which he put into place to allow itself to unfold. Give it a year, let's see what happens. That's why the judgment of all creation is only once a year. But what it said in Gemara, Nidam Chol Yoim, yeah, that's looking at your averis to clean you up, so to speak, you see. So the purpose or the objective of both judgments are very different. You see, that's what the difference between Rosh Hashanah and the other ones is on, you know. What is the Jewish, why is it Aleph Tishrei? Why is Rosh Hashanah Aleph Tishrei? Well, we know so far. Well, the only thing that happened on Aleph Tishrei is Adam Rishon. Adam Rishon is not Jewish. Is he not? Who is Adam Rishon? What's the difference between Yisrael and Ivri? You ever notice? Avraham Avinu is called an Ivri. Who first got the name Yisrael? Yaakov. What happened to Avraham Avinu? Why wasn't he called Yisrael? You ever wonder about that? Why are we called Yisrael? The answer to that is a very important idea. Adam Rishon was not Jewish, but he was an Israeli. He's supposed to laugh at that. He must be tired. In fact, Rosh Hashanah is an Israeli holiday. Now, before they call me to the Knesset and give me an award, wow, an Israeli holiday. I mean, how good it can't get better than this. You know, the difference between Yisrael and Yehudi or Ivri is this. In order for a person to do the tikkun, he has to have a certain type of neshama. Okay? And God gave Adam Rishon that neshama. When God said in the beginning, if Israel accepts the Torah, fine. If not, I'll restore the world to him. Who is Israel? Israel is any person that has that type of neshama, which consists of 5 parts. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chai, Nechida. If anybody has those parts, then he can rectify creation. Because whatever he does, thinking, speaking, or action, will influence all the spiritual worlds. Adam Rishon had that. He was a Yisrael, but he wasn't an Ivri. Because the original intent of God was not to give the ability to do tikkun, right? To a Jew, it was to give it to all mankind. Why should a Jew get it? So therefore, the first one created was Adam Rishon, not a Jew. Because the purpose was to give it to all mankind, because that's only fair. Why give a guy without ability to do tikkun? What's the point? So therefore, God gave it to Adam. That's why Adam is called the Yisrael, but he's not an Ivri. It was only after 2,000 years of sinning that the nation of the world, there was only one, refused to do the mitzvahs and Torah, the tikkun, actually the 7 mitzvahs in Noah, that God turned to Avraham Avinu and said, listen, you're the only one doing what I said, so I'm going to take away the ability of other people to do the tikkun, and I'm going to give you the ability to tikkun and your descendants. So therefore the job of tikkun, which is a job of Yisrael, became a Jewish enterprise. We took over the job of all the world. You see, it's a very important concept. Most people don't realize, you see, you know. And then because God took away the ability of mankind to do the tikkun, he took away a lot of their neshama. They're no longer connected to the upper world. And he allowed Avraham Avinu to continue, because Avraham Avinu was really part of the 70 nations, was part of that. He allowed Avraham Avinu to continue, you see, and that's the Bris Ben Absarim, that he made a covenant with Avraham, that you're the only one that now can do the tikkun. And therefore, the job of Yisrael became a Ivri. It now became a Jewish job. You see, we took over the job of Adam Rishon. You see, therefore, the reason why, so therefore, if we realize that Adam Rishon was a Yisrael, not an Ivri, yes? Well, what's the job of Yisrael? Tikkun. But the tikkun is the whole business, it's not the business of God. And when did the business of tikkun start? With Adam Rishon. And Adam Rishon was created Aleph Tishrei. So therefore, that's annual. You annually assess your business. And that's why the annual assessment of the tikkun is on Rosh Hashanah, which was the creation of the first man who could do the tikkun. You see? And that's why it's on, the judgment is on Rosh Hashanah. It's an annual assessment. You see? So therefore, Rosh Hashanah is really an Israeli holiday in that sense. It's the holiday of Yisrael, because that's when the job of Tikkun really began. And it was taken over later, of course, by Avram Avinu, and so on. So the question is this: it was taken over by Avram Avinu. That means the non-Jews have no purpose. You see, I don't understand how exact this is. You do not exist unless you contribute to the Tikkun. You have no rationale for that. You see, all 300,000 species of beetles, the whole rationale is because they are part of the Tikkun. We don't know how. You see, so if God, the question is if God took away the ability of a goy, and that's the origin of the word goy, somebody who's not Jewish. You see, if God took away the Tikkun ability, so why are they going? It sounds like a very strange question, you know. But if you understand that everything that exists must have a basis in Tikkun, why do they exist? And the answer, they exist because their assignment now is to assist the Jew to do the Tikkun, which of course they don't, you see, and they're going to be in a lot of hot water. But in a certain sense they do, because their job is not to punish the Jews. We'll get into that now. But really, what's happening now is that they now to assist the Jews in ways that the Jews need to be assisted, especially in the concept of persecutions and so on, which is a third Tikkun device. Anyway, so this answers the question, why is Judgment Day on Rosh Hashanah? You see, now you understand why Rosh Hashanah is a Yom Tov. Why? How can we sit down and make a whole meal out of this? And the answer is, because we know we're going to blow the shofar. We know God's going to get up, right? It's guaranteed. You know, it's like, and God's going to go into his private room, and there God's going to, don't worry about it, you know, okay, I'll rough you up a little, you know, but in the end, you're going to be, Haba. So therefore, we're not worried, you see. So the angel chap, wait a minute, what kind of, it's like a charade here, you know, what's going on here, right? When they blow shofar, you're going to guarantee them, right, that they're going to be in Haba. So, you know, what's the problem here? Cut the Prozac out, and let's have Kiddush. You see, that's what the Malachim is saying. So let's say Hallel, because really it's a way that we can be guaranteed that we'll exist, because God will now do it, go into his private chambers when you have the shofar. So God says, wait a minute, let's not get carried away here, right? What does that mean? And it's true that everything will be good for the Jews, even though it's Rosh Hashanah, right? But they can't say Hallel. You don't say Hallel, you have to be joyous. And if you know that you're going to be judged, even if you know the verdict will go ultimately to you, just to walk into a court is nerve-wracking, right? Doesn't make a difference, you know. And therefore, you cannot say Hallel. But that's why Rosh Hashanah is a Yom Tov, because the Jews are guaranteed to walk out and survive and be in the future world. You see, why do we say Malchus is a Chronis and Shofars? Because what we're really doing is pleading and say, listen, you know, we want to survive, and we realize the main thing we have to do is declare you king. We have to recognize that you are supreme being, and we have to follow your will. So that's the first set of psukim, Malchus, where we say that God is king. And ultimately, that's the tshuva, you see. What happens if we don't do that? So then we plead with him on the second bunch of psukim, which is a chronis, and we say, okay, we're not doing the tshuva, but remember our fathers, what they did, that they worshipped you, so maybe on their merit we can also survive, you see. And then if that doesn't work, then we say psukim on shofar, which means please, get out of that room and just go into your private chambers. You see. And we also understand also what a shofar is. A shofar stops the sun. That's what it's for. In fact, if you don't blow shofar, it's bad news. Because Gemara says that if a city does not blow shofar, they will have a very bad year. Even though collectively Jews are blowing shofar, but individually they're not being protected. You see. So that's the concept of shofar, and we now understand why shofar, the sounds of a shofar, kiyah, shvam, and truah, why they resemble crying. Because there are three ways a person can cry. A wail, or a staccato, a wail, or a sigh. Because shofar stops the satan, true. But it does move God into the yichud room, and the yichud room is a lot of suffering. because that's how he bails us out. So therefore the shofar is really saying, please, do anything you do, let's get us out of that courtroom, right? Even if we have to go into the room where we know there'll be a lot of suffering in order to save us, rehabilitate us, do it. And that's the crying of the shofar and so on. Why is the Sultan confused? Because he's hoping, it's not that he's confused, he's confounded because he's hoping the Jews won't blow shofar. So therefore his job won't end, see? So of course he knows the Jews can blow shofar, but he's hoping that he's got enough Jews assimilated, integrated, and unaffiliated, right? And so on, that they won't blow. And unfortunately, many of them don't, and so on, you know? But when he hears the shofar, he gets tremendously confounded, because frustrated, I should say, and therefore, of course, as a result of that, he knows that the job's over and so on. The question is, why does shofar work? There's always a logical rationale. What is the rationale of shofar? Okay, I blow a horn, ram's horn, fine, okay. Why does it work? And the answer to that is because of the Akedah. What was the merit of Avraham Avinu by the Akedah? It's a very important concept. Why is it we're still telling God, give us the merit of what Avraham Avinu did 4,000 years ago? Why do we still have that merit? Because you have to understand what the Akedah really was. God appears to Avraham Avinu and he says, okay, you know the guy in the next room? Yeah, it's my son Yitzchak, right? Okay, I want you tomorrow morning to go and kill him. Actually, God didn't say that. He just said, bring him up as a sacrifice. The oilo, you know. Now, so Avraham Avinu was immediately faced with 7 difficulties that went through his mind. Okay? These are called the 7 Nisyonis of Avraham Avinu. Okay, what are they? First Nisyon. What do you mean God is telling me to kill a person? He's innocent. That means God wants human sacrifices? Excuse me, this is pagan. You know, Jews don't sacrifice anybody. God doesn't require sacrifices. I mean, Yitzchak is a tzaddik. It's not that he's guilty of death. God never asked somebody to kill somebody else unless they are terribly, idol worshippers like Amalek or whatever and so on. But we're talking about Yitzchak. So like Avraham was stunned when he killed Yitzchak. First, so that's the first blockage, this son. Okay? Second thing is, Avraham Avinu understood the worth of a human being. You know, to him he understood what the significance of a human being is. So wait a minute, how do I kill anybody? Third idea, that Avraham Avinu is Chesed. You know what Chesed is? He loves, he couldn't wait to have people to serve, right? The last thing a guy who's about Chesed is to kill somebody else. That's the Achzorius is the exact opposite. So he had to fight his own nature. Well, I'm not this. I'm not an Achzor, I'm about Chesed. How can I go kill anybody? Fourth idea, right? That's my son. God is telling me to kill my son. Excuse me, right? Fifth idea, the guy in the next room is not just my son, he's a Jew. You want me to kill a Jew. The sixth idea, he's the last Jew. There's nobody after Yitzchak, was there? He's the last guy, you kill him, you know what I'm saying? That's the end of the Jewish race, right? So like, excuse me, what? 6 different Nisyonis that would have boggled anybody, you see? And Avraham was hearing this at one shot. So did that get him? No. It was the 7th Nisyon that he went crazy with. What's that? Avraham Avinu was a brilliant individual. In fact, there are many people that say that Avraham Avinu is what gave the Chochmah to Egypt. Because he went down to Egypt, if you recall, that the Chochmah of mathematics, geometry, astronomy, many things came from Avraham Avinu. That's what many people say that. And not only that, they say that Greek wisdom also originated from Avraham Avinu. You see, it's interesting. In fact, if you want to just as an interesting aside, you know, nah, skip that. The seventh was incredible. What was that? Because it didn't make sense. God said a nevuah to Avraham Avinu, Ki b'Yitzchak yikar chozara. In Yitzchak you will be called your seed, means your continuity will happen to Yitzchak, right? That's one prophecy. And then all of a sudden God appears and gives him another prophecy, kill him. Now, those two prophecies are incompatible. They are what's called mutually exclusive. If A is true, B cannot be true. And if B is true, then A cannot be true. You know, it's not possible for Yitzchak to be the continuity of the Jewish people and be dead at the same time. Nobody has ever seen that work. You see, so Avraham Avinu said, this doesn't make sense. It's impossible. God is contradicting himself. You see, what that means is that God is appearing to me irrational, psychotic. This is God. Excuse me, what's going on here? Now, the other idea is, you know, we don't know why God does anything. That's unknown. But God does not contradict himself. You see, that's illogical. You see, yet the Moshe was appearing to Avraham Avinu as illogical. So and Avraham Avinu was one of the greatest philosophers, thinkers of logic. That was the worst thing. It made no sense. What kind of a God is this that's illogical? See, this is the worst thing that bothered Avraham Avinu. I see. Everything else he can handle. You see. So therefore the Messiah Avinu that he couldn't handle an illogical request, which is impossible. Now, did God really do that? Of course not. The Moshe never told him to kill Yitzhak. He just said, bring him up as an oilah, and then take him down. But he didn't mention take him down. So the logical assumption is if you tell him to bring him up as an oilah, logically, he'd probably just finish the job. But God never said that, so God never contradicted himself. But he allowed Avraham Avinu to fool him, to fall into the trap, and just follow the logical conclusion. Well, if I bring him up as an oilah, as a sacrifice, a korban, then obviously I'm going to kill him. He assumed that was the command, which of course it wasn't. Therefore, Avraham Avinu didn't know what to do. So Avraham Avinu, imagine a guy has that command, you know, and Yitzchak is only a real son from Sarah. That's his only one, you know. Imagine he's commanded by God to kill the guy. We cannot even understand what type of Messiah that was. But anyway, but Avraham Avinu said to himself, listen, I have no idea what's going on here. I mean, this is beyond my understanding. But I know one thing. I need to follow the dictates of God because in some way, God is right. In some way, it has to make sense. And therefore, what I will do is I will do the Ratzon HaTorah. Even if I don't understand it, I will fight my own critical analysis that this situation I'm being put in is impossible. Alpha became, I'll do it anyway. Now, therefore, that's the Nisoyin of the Akedah. Okay. The question is, why would God do that? Well, this is the 10th Nisoyin, right? Why would God appear to Avraham Avinu illogical, irrational? You see, that's the question. And the answer is because it was an incredible chesed. What was that? Because God said, now I know you fear me. You see. Now, the question is, why did God do that? Well, one idea is like Rashi says, because the Jews will sin. So what's going to happen is the Satan, the nations of the world being represented by their malach, because every nation has a malach. They're going to say, why do you love the Jews so much? Look what they're doing. They abandon you. They abandon you. They sin. Why do you love them so much? You know, get rid of them and take us. So the Marshal says, look at Avraham Avinu, that he is following my ratzon, my will, even though I'm completely irrational. So if Avraham Avinu fails to abandon me, to give me up, how can I give them up no matter what they do? And Rashi says, so what the Marshal gave is Avraham Avinu and all the Jewish people an unbelievable defense that no matter what they sin, you see, God will not abandon the Jewish people. However, what really comes out of this is something else. What the Marshal said is because you listened to me, even though I was irrational and I was illogical, then therefore the Jews, if they ever ask me to be illogical and irrational, which is the Hanhogas HaYichud, I will grant them. You see, in other words, what happened by Avraham is he provided the Jews with the merit that if we say to Moshe, listen, we can't stand this prosecutor, we're finished. We are asking you to go into the activities, the behavior called Hanagas HaYichud, which to us is irrational, because nobody knows how it works. For instance, to give an example, if you understand how illogical the Hanagas HaYichud is, what's the classic example of Hanagas HaYichud? The Holocaust. The Holocaust made no sense, because it's one thing to get punished. It's another thing where the Nazis in Machshmon take your skin for for lampshades, then take your fat, and take everything about you. I mean, what kind of a way what is this? Makes no sense, you see, in that way. And not only that, how does a father subject his kids to this? The Holocaust is part of Hanagas HaYichud. We have no understanding of how this can help us do the tikkun, but it is. But the merit of that is from Avraham Avinu. Since you listen to me, even though I appear to you illogical, then the Jews have a right to ask me to go into the Hanagas HaYichud, which looks illogical, which of course is not. They have a right to ask that. And therefore, they need to blow the shofar. And what is a shofar? It is the original ram that Avraham Avinu substituted for Yitzchak. It's the ram's horn, you see. And that's part of the ram. Remember it says, Tachas B'noi? That he took a ram instead of a kid, instead of Yitzchak, and so on. So they have the right. So that's the mechanism, that we can blow shofar based on the Akedah. And that's why we read the Akedah, okay? We read the Akedah on Rosh Hashanah. Because the merit of shofar has to do with what Avraham Avinu did. That's Rosh Hashanah, you see? I've now gone to a whole different drama about what Rosh Hashanah is, what the essence of Rosh Hashanah really is. It's all about the tikkun, to come back. And that's the real judgment. And therefore, it's not just individuals, but everything. Why are animals judged? Why? And the answer to that is they're not judged. They're judged, where do I want to put these things in order to help the Jews do the tikkun? You see? God can say, okay, I don't like what Spain is doing, whatever, right? So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get all the locusts which hang out in Africa, right? And they're going to change from grasshopper to locust, which by the way is a real transformation. And they're going to be carried by the winds over the Mediterranean. And guess what? They're going to land in Spain or Israel, whatever, Mediterranean country. You see? So it's not a judgment on the grasshoppers, the locusts. It was a reassignment. They were judged in terms of the tikkun process, not for guilt or innocence, but what do I do with them to advance the process? That's why everything is judged, because everything has changed in terms of how is everything now, based on what the level of spirituality that the Jews did, how is everything going to be changed in order to now advance the process after the Jews have not done their job? What do I do now? So everything is taken into consideration. You see, that's how global, this is not even global, it's universal. It's far beyond what we can comprehend, where everything in creation is judged. Okay, what do I do with them, and where do I put them to make sure that the tikkun goes on? It's a process which is so beyond our understanding, that and God does it in an instant nanosecond. That's how quick He does, you see. Now, what do? How do we approach Rosh Hashanah? We approach based on that what does God really want from a Jew? Of course He wants us to do mitzvahs and to do tshuva and so on, you see. But essentially, what does He want? I will tell you what He wants. And that's I feel, is the key defense. It's not so much, well, I won't do this sin and that sin. Of course we do that, no question. Because that's in many ways contributing to the bad news. But the real news is, where is your focus? Is your focus on materialism, on power, on pleasure, the classic traps of mankind? Or is your focus on trying to get closer to God, trying to be more spiritual? You see, it's not the focus like I say, well, I did this sin, I'm not going to do this sin again. Of course it's true, but that's not the focus, because the tikkun is not focused on it's focused on the specific avera. It's focused on where are you in terms of the tikkun. Therefore, the essential concept of tikkun is where are you in terms of your direction? What are your priorities? You see, so really what a person has to say to himself is, okay, I need to get involved in Judaism. I need to get involved in Torah, learn more Torah. I need to get involved where I see God and the spirituality that God requires, and the whole concept of tikkun, because think about it, tikkun simply means bringing God back. That's ruchnius, that's spirituality. This is what I need to do. So you begin making what's called a cheshbon hanefesh. Okay, what are those things I can leave? What are those things I still have to focus, and so on. In other words, what you begin to think about is you need to prioritize your life toward a spiritual dimension, and not what the physical dimension where everybody is focused. You see, that to me is the greatest defense you have, you see. And the more you think about that, the more you change in ruchnius, and it may be hard, and so on, and you're going to have to give up things to do it. But in the end, that's what it's all about. That's really what's called the bottom line, you see. And as I would say, we're very close to the Mashiach, very close, you know. So the last thing you want to say to yourself, you know, and Mashiach comes, and all of a sudden, once Mashiach comes, there's no more free will. It's over, because you see God. I mean, there's no test anymore. That's why the angels have no free will, because God is right in front of them. You see, what free will do they really have? You see? So when the Mashiach comes, specifically, Mashiach ben David, although it's even true in Mashiach ben Yosef time and so on, free will is basically over. So whatever you do now is compelled, and so on. The last thing you want to say to yourself or realize is, you know, I heard a lecture from Rabbi Kessin that he said I should have prioritized, right? And I didn't do it. This is bad news. Why not listen to him? Now, don't listen to me, right? Listen to God. Because this is what Rosh Hashanah is really trying to get you to do. You need to prioritize your life in the direction of ruchnius, spirituality, and getting close to God, and so on. And there are things you're going to have to do it. You're going to have to give up things, like I said. You know, you're going to have to set aside different things, schedules or whatever. But this is the bottom line, you know, and that's what God wants, and He's the boss. You know, He decides. And remember, we're not talking here about, a new job here. We are talking about an existence in the future world for eternity. That's a big stake. You know, we don't even know what it means to live forever. You know what I'm saying? Because even after 100 billion years, there's still another infinity to go. That's the interesting thing about forever. You know, it just never ends. You live like, wow, it's 100 billion years now. How much more can I have? What do you mean? There's another eternity after this. It never ends, you know. That's the stakes. The stakes are eternal existence. But it's not even only that. It's eternal existence, or rather I should say, infinite bliss eternally. That's what it is. Whatever God has stored up for us is beyond our imagination. And it's an infinite bliss. And it goes on forever, which is incredible, you know. If somebody told you, you know, I want you to do a certain thing, but the reward of that, right, is you're going to have, $100 million. You'd run out and do it right away, right? So if somebody tells you, hey, the reward for this is infinite bliss, which we cannot even comprehend, right? Eternally, never ends. Wow. What are you asking for? What's the price? Right? And the answer is, the price is, do my will. Get involved with God, because He's waiting, you see. Somebody once asked, where is God? Where is He? And the answer is, wherever you let Him in. That's really what it is. It's not that you got to drag Him in. You know, He's waiting, He's got to send God an invitation. No. God is clamoring to get into your life. You just have to let Him in. I shouldn't say you. We are the obstacle, because I include myself. We are the obstacle to God's presence in our lives, not Him. You see, God has never said, I will decide. No, God doesn't limit Himself. We limit Him. It's a very important idea. That means that we have the control if He enters our lives or not. We are the ones totally in control, and He just waits, you know. And another idea which is important, look how much God wants to get into our lives. You have 30 days of Elul, right? He warns us, right? And then if that's not enough, then Rosh Hashanah judges, and then he gives the appeal process for 10 days. You know what I'm saying? And then there's even more, which I'll talk about next week, that God is desperately trying to get in to every Jew's personal life and see, you know. So when you think about it, wow, I mean, God is so desperate, you know, I have to have Rahmanas on him. You know, I have to have mercy on God, never, you know. I gotta let him in some way, you know, and so on, you know. So I urge everybody to think about, you know, the Shir, and to think about, you know, the consequences of Rosh Hashanah is. And Rosh Hashanah is an incredible gift. It allows us to think about our life, because I tell you, without Rosh Hashanah, nobody would think about changing. You'd go on for the rest of your life, right? And the only time the wake-up call, the only time you'd ever have a wake-up call, right, is when you're lying in a coffin, right? And that's a bad time to have a wake-up call. Because guess what? You ain't waking up. See, this is the problem with wake-up calls after your death. You see, so the truth is, Rosh Hashanah is a tremendous chesed. You see, because without that, we'd never stop. We'd never think. We'd never make a cheshbon, as they say, or some type of reckoning, you see. So at least for our sake, Rosh Hashanah stops us and says, wait a minute, you know, you need to make a reckoning. And if I have to hit you over the head with it, you're going to do it, you see. And thank God for that, because then we can think about it in terms of what we want to do, you see. So therefore, I certainly urge everybody to really think in terms of their lives, and really try to alter whatever you can. Learn more Torah, because Torah is where it's at. It's the greatest of all mitzvahs. Learn more Torah, go to more shurim, and there are shurim around. There are many shurim around that you can go if you really want to go. The problem is we push off shurim. I got to do this. I got to visit the Bubba. I got to see my Heinkel. Well, it's all important. Yeah, but the problem is Torah learning is too easily pushed aside, very easily. You see, and therefore, but there are many shurim around, and you really have to take advantage of that. Let's put it this way, you need to commit. If you commit, it'll happen. You don't commit, it'll never happen, you see. And therefore, that's what you have to do. Get really serious about it. Okay, so I really hope everybody got the message. And now that we know what Rosh Hashanah is all about, really what it's all about, and if we all do tshuva, right, you'd be surprised. The Mashiach will come, mamash, out of nowhere, and finally the tikkun process will be complete, and the world will never be the same. It'll just be an incredible place to live. Thank you.
It's